communion of blessed Trinity. The joy of love, the joy for all God's family. The joy of love, transcending time and space. Our love for each other, mirrors of the Father's love. The joy of love, the joy for all the earth.
Chatechesis.
Chatechesis, for sure. Welcome to Radio Maria Ireland. Thanks, Emil. I don't know how long the camera's been on. I've been sort of just my head down here, stuck in things. So hopefully you haven't abandoned me on Facebook or YouTube Live. So good morning, welcome. Thank you for your company today, and nice to be back here at the microphone once again. Father Eamonn McCarthy is my name. If you're new to Radio Maria Ireland, and thank you for listening in and tuning in today. I've been off sick the last few days, just a bit bunged up and gummed up and so on. But thank God, doing well once again. There's colds and there's flus and there's all kinds of things going around. I suppose chest infections and whatever else. It's normal. It's the time of year. And, we tend to get all up in a tizwaz over these things now and worry that it's the pandemic or the virus or all these other things. And it seems as if, things like colds and flus have sort of disappeared into oblivion. And that's not true. These things are still floating around. So whatever little bug I had anyway, thanks be to God, it's lifted again and feeling much better and back on track and back on the microphone too. So thank you indeed. Thanks for all the prayers and support indeed. A number of people indeed texted in just to offer prayers and that as well. So very grateful. So good to have your company. As always, we do love to hear from you. You are part of our radio family. And so feel free to engage with us, to text in, to email in, to get in touch with us. The numbers, as usual, many of you know them off by heart. Could probably sing them at this stage. 089-467-2000 is the text and WhatsApp number. info@radiomaria.ie is the email address. And if you want to give a call on the landline, please do as well. 014-123-456. 014-123-456. No, very good. Maybe a few thoughts, because a few listeners have texted in and they've just put before us the same topic that comes up at this time every year. And it's of concern indeed, obviously. But how do we approach it in the light of faith? And this is to do with Hallowe'en and all the excesses that can accompany this time of year in relation to a preponderance on what borders certainly on the occult. So just an area to be very cautious of and very careful of, but to be very pragmatic, I would say, and commonsensical about too. One of the things that I can't quite understand is why adults would inflict some of this stuff, at least anyway, on children. Because some of it can be, just a little bit on the sort of scary side, just at the natural level. The idea of, again, monsters and ghosts and goblins and witches and all these things. When it is taken to excess and when people begin to travel further on down that road, that's when it goes from just being the kind of scary moment to entering into the danger field and the danger area of the occult. The occult will be that which is connected with the spirit world, and particularly demons and the demonic world. That is an area just simply to be avoided. I wouldn't allow myself to get unduly overexcited about these things, and I'm slow enough even to give it much in the way of oxygen either. Because the more oxygen you give these things and the more you pay attention to these things, it's a waste of good air. It's a waste of good energy. Catherine told me a little story. I hadn't heard it before, actually, a little while ago, about Saint Padre Pio. And poor Padre Pio was afflicted with these manifestations of demons and spirits, again on account of his incredible holiness and his mysticism and his life of prayer and of intense suffering. But Padre Pio, like every good saint, treated it with the disdain with which it deserved. And I don't mean in a kind of flippant way either, because he did so in the confidence that his faith and his life of prayer and his sacramental life gave him, and didn't allow it to impinge on him in any way. Rather saw the value of faith, again, in prayer and sacramental life and sacramentals and all these things to defend him and protect him against anything untoward or anything evil. And the story was told that he was sound asleep at night time and there was noises and bumps and, nonsense going on. And the devil used to use these kind of things, would do it as well with, who was it, St. Jean-Marie Vianney. And it's very, very seldom that the devil would seek to manifest himself in any visible or audible way. It's just not his style. He much prefers if we just march along as if he didn't exist and are convinced that he didn't exist. He's far happier with that. He doesn't want to show his hand. He's far too clever for that. Anyway, he woke up Padre Pio this night, and Padre Pio turned around, and apparently the devil was obviously manifest in some way. He said, "Oh, it's only you." He turned around and went back to sleep. As if, forget about it. Again, that's not to be too flippant either, but it's just to give a sense of balance and a sense of proportion in regard to these things. Hallowe'en, of course, and to put the emphasis correctly where it ought to be. Hallow meaning holy, ean meaning evening, hallow evening, holy evening, evening of holy, evening of all holies, evening before all saints. So it's less to do, and I'm not so sure how all this other nonsense crept in so easily. It's less to do with all of that than it is to celebrating the holy day of all saints, which is next Monday. And what a blessing indeed, and what an incredible feast day and beautiful feast day it is to celebrate the lives of all our great, wonderful saints. If you listen here to Radio Maria, of course, you'll be very familiar with the litany of the saints, the Irish saints, which we include of a lunchtime. And as a kind of reminder to self, actually, maybe it is that we should be including the litany of saints in general, perhaps, of a moment during the weekday too. Maybe we should do that of a Sunday rosary. Would that be an idea? Just to remember all the other saints. I'm reminded of that because of the lovely celebration of the ordination of Deacon John McAneny to the priesthood. Now, Father John McAneny, a good friend of ours, of course, here at Radio Maria. And if you were listening on Sunday afternoon, you will have heard the beautifully sung Litany of the Saints. Really nice to hear that. It's just a very special moment in the rite of ordination before the laying on of hands. Am I right in that? Or is it after? I think it's before. The Holy Spirit is certainly invoked, and then all the saints are invoked as well. And everyone is kneeling and facing the tabernacle, while the candidate for priesthood is prostrate, face down on the altar, or face down on the ground before the altar, and invoking this heavenly assistance, So that's really what Hallowe'en is about. Doesn't really have anything much at all really to do with all these other evil connotations which have become associated with it. And then again, of course, I mention every year, again, gone past, I have happy memories of this time of year, just mucking around with the usual Halloween things, trying to fish an apple out of a dish of water with your mouth and your hands tied behind your back, or trying to bite into an apple hanging off the door jamb. Some of these silly customs, and shelling peanuts and going around house to house as a child, again, trick or treat, that kind of thing. But it's become commercialized, and this is part of the whole thing. And with the commercialization, there are those who've capitalized on the scary side of things too. And then with that, naturally, see, once you open up a little door in that direction, this is why I'm loath to give this too much in the way of oxygen. Once you open the door up in that direction, well, it opens it up again, and we see that tendency now towards occult practices. And so now we're hearing of festivals and things being celebrated with this in mind. Now, for my part, and I hope for yours, just walk away. Just don't go anywhere near these things any more than you'd go near the edge of a cliff on a windy day. Just stay away from the edge of the cliff. No need to stand there and to start shouting at people to stop throwing themselves over it. Stay away from it. Encourage others to stay away from the edge of the cliff. Because once you enter into these things, once you allow these things to get too close, hurt inevitably follows. And I would always sternly warn children in school. I'd ask them first, this be older teenagers now, it's not something I would again enter into lightly or in any great depth with the younger. I'm thinking pre-junior cert level, because the boys and girls still have a certain amount of innocence in that regard yet, but by the time they've reached 16, 17, it becomes something that they may well have come across. And I'd always ask the pupils, and invariably there will be some who would have said they've had experience or they know somebody who's had a pretty scary experience. And so I'd make it very clear to them. I'd look in the movies, who do they look for but the Catholic priest to come and bless, to come and pray, to come and deliver in the name of Jesus Christ from these things and the influence of these things. And that in a way I would be hopeful that if anyone has had such a scare or a fright or an encounter, that it would remind them of the very existence and the reality of evil and the devil and demons, and their hatred for us, and that they would stay on the path of staying well away from these things and rather stay in the state of grace. Because anyone in a state of grace and anyone who remains on this path and strives to stay on this path need have nothing to worry about. Just, walk away, shrug your shoulders and let it be. And, gently warn others to say, look, this is a risky business. That if you enter into that realm, I've likened it before to the idea of going into a boxing ring with a blindfold on against a professional fighter. When we really expose ourselves to these things, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing, and we just have no realization how really dangerous these things can be to the life of the spirit, and what damage they can do. So when we see these things going on around us with a certain intensity nowadays, is it any surprise? Does it come as any great shock, let's say, to the system? Not really, when we've seen, and at every other day of the year, not just the 31st of October, but every other day of the year, a real moral decay and spiritual decay primarily around us. So when people abandon prayer and abandon faith and push God out of their lives, we are made, you see, we're spiritual beings. We're not just human material beings, we're also spiritual. And so that void, when people turn away from God, it demands to be filled in some way. And we see all the ways that people are filling these things nowadays with excess in relation to all things audio-visual and these blessed phones. And technology has a lot of us enslaved and entrapped into their constant cycle of banality and malformation, and pushing out to the periphery, pushing out altogether often enough the things of God because of the plethora of secular content. And so when God is pushed out, it's easy then for the devil to find a way in. And he doesn't care. He doesn't have to be anything special or anything overtly manifest, but just leading us to sin. And what is sin, you see, except a breaking of our relationship with God? It's a deterioration of our relationship with God. And if it's serious, again, it cuts off the flow of grace. The devil's quite happy with that. He'll leave it there. Doesn't need to do any more after that. So when it is that our day-to-day, everyday life and existence is travelling that path, away from the things of God, it's no surprise then that people begin to kind of celebrate this in the ways that are being suggested around the Halloween time. And not just Halloween time, any time of the year when it comes to it. There are those who would practice this kind of cultish and occultish practices. Who's the great blessed now? He's not a saint, I don't think yet. Bartolo Longo, who's commended to us for his incredible zeal and love for the Holy Rosary. But we know his story, how he was a priest in a satanic church, involved in the diabolic, in a deep way. Awful, dark place to be. But Our Lady rescued him and brought him out from there. And today, again, his cause, because he just gave his life, like a St. Paul experience, utterly turned his life around. And the shrine in Pompeii, from where we had the Rosary, our last World Family Moment, is a tribute to him and his work. He did marvellous work to establish tremendous devotion to Our Blessed Lady, and held fast to his Rosary and to her. There's the antidote and there's the solution. So it shouldn't come as any great surprise, but it's saddening certainly to see the prevalence of this kind of thing, and especially this time of year. So I wouldn't be for, again, paying too much attention to it or giving it too much in the way of oxygen, as I say. But certainly if it arises and it's something that impinges or impacts, try to turn it off in another direction. Like Padre Pio, turning over and going back to sleep. And what I find a little bit troubling is if children are exposed to these kind of things to excess. Again, I'm not referring to the kind of childish things that we used to do for Halloween, these sort of simple little things. Rather the ones that might tend to veer off into too much in the way of scare factor. Because what this kind of scaredom and all this stuff can tend to do is injure our trust in God. And the only one, as the Lord says, to fear is he who can destroy both body and soul in hell. So in other words, a right-ordered fear of God's holiness and of offending him is where we ought to invest anything otherwise by way of fear. And again, if we stay in a state of grace, again, I like that lovely little story of Saint Therese of Lisieux, where as a little girl, she wrote about it, I think. The devil appeared to her in the window at one point. I don't know how exactly it manifested itself, but when she turned around to look, the spirit disappeared or just ran off, kind of thing. And she was given to understand that as a young girl and close to the Lord and Our Lady, that being in a state of grace, it was kind of like a mouse in the presence of a cat. As soon as the cat appears, the mouse is gone for cover. That sort of idea. The two can't tolerate one another. And of these great stories too we've heard of those they've been delivered from evil spirits, so they've been permitted to speak. It's when Our Lady arrives on the scene and the devil just can't tolerate being in the same place. It's just can't even mention our name. So when we're close to Our Lady, have absolutely no fear at all. So instead of all these other things being put on gates and on walls and spiders and skeletons and all this stuff, why not put out a holy picture? I know my mum, God rest her, when this time of year came around, she'd hang a rosary out on the door outside, a blessed rosary, or a holy picture or something, maybe a Divine Mercy picture. Why not put one of those in the window instead? And when the little children come around to the house, do what I did. I've mentioned this before too. You might have some little treat for them there. But I used to give out miraculous medals. And it was just lovely in the housing estate where I was, the last parish I was in, to the mums and dads, or where one of the parents would or an older brother and sister, would be coming around with the little children. And I'm sure they were only 4 or 5 or 6 or something. They were small little kids. And I give them a nice welcome, because when else would they come to my front door? They wouldn't come near me, maybe otherwise. So I sort of welcomed it as a nice opportunity. And what I had handy was some blessed miraculous medals. And I'd tell them the story of the miraculous medal. And I'd frame it in the idea of a dead body. Again, given the sort of the scare element of this thing. And I'd say, well, look, there's a dead body that you can go and see, and she's in a glass coffin, so that there's like window panes on the coffin, and she's lying there, and you can go right up close and see her, and it's really amazing. She looks as if she's just asleep, and yet she's been dead for over 100 years. And her name is Catherine Labore. And she's not the only one. There's lots of these around the world. And that lovely young nun, she's dressed in her nun's habit with her veil and everything, and her hands are joined in prayer, and she's asleep. Looks as if she's asleep, but she's actually been dead for well over 100 years, maybe 150 years by now. And she, as a young woman, Mary, the mother of Jesus, appeared to her. And Mary sat on the chair, and St. Catherine was allowed to come close and put her hands in prayer on Our Lady's lap. And it was a lovely moment between mother and child. And she gave her this beautiful medal and told her to make it with these images on the front and on the back, and that all who wear it with faith, she would be there as their mother, and she would intercede for them. And so, I say this is a sign, the fact that her body is there, it's intact. The word we use is incorrupt, has never decayed away. It's a sign to us that Mary, our Heavenly Mother, wants us to be with her forever, to be incorrupt in the same way in spirit and in body, in immortal, in the life to come, because that's what Jesus taught her and did for us. And so kind of tell the story in that way, in simple terms, when you're dealing with young, small children like that. And so I'd say the little prayer. I said, there's a lovely prayer. Now, you see the picture of Mary on the middle there. There's a lovely prayer around Mary. It says, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee." Nice little prayer for you to pray. And I'd bless the middle while I'm with them. And I'd put a knot on the top of it while I'm talking. And I'd put it around their necks. And so the next house they go to, they'd have their Dracula mask on or whatever else. Frankenstein, I don't know what they'd be wearing. But their miraculous medal around their necks, So I tried to turn it into a little moment of grace in that way, because there's no doubt at this time of year there's tremendous grace is flowing in the church. Of course, of the indulgence for the holy souls. I'll chat a bit more with you about that too in the coming days. How we can help the holy souls in purgatory through our prayers and visiting the cemetery. It's a lovely practice, a beautiful thing to do, and strongly encouraged by the church. So it really is great. So this is what I would say. Try to take advantage of the time of year rather than allow ourselves get in any way upset or waste energy or waste breath on any of the other stuff. It's there. It's a reality. It's a sad indication to us of the spiritual and moral decay of our times, and is lamentable indeed, and an encouragement and incentive to us to pray and to draw down the presence of Jesus and Mary in our own lives and in our own homes, and thereby, like the gospel this morning, to be a leaven in the community, to have that presence flow. Like I say, if they come to your door trick-or-treating, give them some sweet or something, but give them a miraculous medal, or maybe just a little holy picture prayer card they can hold on to. Keep that safe by you there in your room at night time, on your locker. And this lovely saint or this image of Our Lady, she'll protect you from all evil. She's our real mother. So you might like to keep that. That'll be a lovely thing to give children when they come to the doors on this time of year. So again, don't allow yourself to become, again, unduly concerned or worried. These things are manifest and they're out there, and they're, again, I'm avoiding trying to be overly flippant, I'd say, or it's important that we pay attention to these realities, but not to give them so much that we're somehow contained by it, or frozen by it, or locked into inaction. Or be at peace with these things, and realize that they're there, and that we have the ongoing task ourselves of doing battle with the forces of evil every day of the year, not just one day in the year, and that this is a struggle that all of us contend with, and that we hope and pray indeed our brothers and sisters and our family and our community, these things will not have an untoward influence upon. So let's just courageously play our part in all of this too. So very good. If you have any reactions or any thoughts on that, I can continue the conversation in the coming days. Be happy to chat with you more about it and tell me what you think, or there's any little areas of exploration too. We can certainly touch in on that. So let's have a little piece of music by way of a break. And let me invite you, please, to interact with us, 089 467 2000, text and WhatsApp, and phone us, 014 123 456. Email us, info@radiomaria.ie as well. Or if you'd like to write to us as well, by all means do as well. And the address here is, very simply, St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymont Road, Dublin 22. So very good. Thanks, Dave, for coming. We have a little piece of music lined up. Shane is looking after me at the mixing desk here, and back after this.
Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. Your right hand holds me fast. Oh Lord, you search me and you know me. You know my resting and my rising. You discern my purpose from afar. You mark when I walk or lie down. All my ways lie open to you. Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. Your right hand holds me fast. Behind and before you beseech me. Your hand ever laid upon me. Too wonderful for me this knowledge, too high beyond my reach. Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. Your right hand holds me fast.
Oh, where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your face? If I climb the heavens or lie in the grave, you are there.
Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. Your right hand holds me fast. If I take the wings of the dawn and dwell at the sea's furthest end, even there your hand would lead me. Your right hand would hold me fast. Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. Your right hand holds me fast. If I say that the darkness hide me, and the light around me be night, even darkness is not dark for you, and the night is as clear as the day. Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. Your right hand holds me fast.
Before I formed you in the womb,
I knew you.
Before you came to birth,
I consecrated you.
I appointed you
as prophet to the nations.
from the prophet Jeremiah.
Chapter 1, verse 5.
Here at Radio Maria Ireland, we are proud
to be
pro-life. Chatechesis, Chatechesis.
There you go, Chatechesis. Thanks to that, Shane. A lovely piece of music as well. Even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. How appropriate indeed, given the kind of darkness that comes over us this time of year. Thanks to the messages and those who are listening in and watching in and in touch as well. Thanks, Christina. Nice to have you with us this morning. And let me see, Virginia as well. Thanks for explaining the meaning of Halloween. Maura and Maria is there as well. She says, I don't like Halloween and the Americanized themes associated with it. It's too macabre, or macabre, I know how you pronounce that exactly, especially for children. Yes, that's exactly what I was saying, Maria, it's true. I just wonder if the appropriateness of the scare levels that accompany some of this stuff for small children, I don't think it's healthy for them really, because again, children are just so vulnerable and so innocent, and what would we not wish to do to keep them safe and keep them protected and keep them well and away from anything sinister at too young an age? Because like all of us, we grow up in time, and as we do grow up, there's enough sinister things around. Sinistre, of course, meaning the left, kind of coming from the dark side, as it were. There's enough of that, that'll come their way in plenty good time. It's not good, I don't think, to expose children at that young an age, but to keep them safe. And that lovely hymn, even in the darkness, you are near. Your right hand holds me fast. That's straight out of the Psalms. They're beautiful. That's Fum Lee, of course, one of our favourites here, and lovely, lovely music as well. So there you are. So if you want to interact and just chat a bit more about that whole question, please do. Now, just going back over some of the texts that came into us for this moment in the day. Yes, chatting about all this. Interesting, just going back over some of these. Eileen was in touch there. Somebody was asking about the mark or the sign in the book of Revelation, the book of Apocalypse. And again, you know my style maybe a little bit now, trying not to explode these things into too much in the way of sensation, and to realise that the book of Revelation is something symbolic. It's not as if we're all rubber stamped with something. There are those who will again suggest it's something like the vaccine, or I don't know, barcodes, or your phone, or you can label any of these things as sort of universal phenomena, that Big Brother and conspiracy theories and all that stuff is part of the sign of the beast. I have no idea, and nobody knows either. And in fairness to Eileen, she's just echoing the same idea. She says, Father, we have lots of marks. They're all around us, not alone on the forehead. Well, you see, the book of Revelation, I think, sort of depicts that idea of it being visible. And my thought was that it might be something by way of the antithesis of the phylactery, which is the leather pouch worn around the wrist sometimes, but also around the forehead, with the words of the Shema in it. That was the practice of Jews, still is. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. You shall love the Lord your God with all your might, with all your heart, with all your soul, and teach these things to your children, and talk of them when you sit at your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. And so that idea of loving God was kind of foremost, literally, on the mind. So maybe that's where the antithesis of that comes in, this idea of a mark. But there's lots of marks, as Eileen says. But what marks us apart, and again, this is where I come back to every time, gently but firmly, is the light of faith and the life of prayer, the gift of baptism, the sacraments of the Church, confession, the Holy Eucharist. All of these things mark us and set us apart, and we live differently, and we fear less the things of this world. We're more at peace with one another, and we look out and are more charitably disposed towards one another as a result as well. And these are all very positive marks for which we ought to be known. So thanks, Eileen. That was good. I think I've answered Nancy's question there just with the chat beforehand. Somebody reacting to Sunday's Gospel. I was listening to that actually in the lovely homily that Bishop Fonzie preached at the ordination of Father John McEnany. Speaking about spiritual blindness, Bartimaeus, the man who was born blind, Lord, that I may see, was his question. And this listener is speaking of the spiritual blindness in which we find ourselves. And like the blind man, no one wants to hear us if we shout out and wish to get closer to God to seek his help. It's as if poor Bartimaeus was being hushed up and told to stay in your place and that. And we experience that maybe ourselves sometimes too. It's a good point to think on. And Jericho, of course, was where the scene was set, and led by Joshua, the wall of Jericho came tumbling down by faith and trust in God. And Joshua, of course, parting the River Jordan, so that the Ark of the Covenant went into the city. We need this faith today. God is near and always asking us to, what do you want? That's Bartimaeus when he came to the Lord. What is it? What can I do for you? So if you were asked that question, how would you answer it if the Lord said to you, what do you want? A very good question to ask ourselves. So thanks to the listener who texted that in. Well done. That's a nice little reflection there as well. Now for the text here as well, just going through them, and this is really what Chatechesis is about. I just love to hear from you and engage with you on these topics that are pertinent and relevant and important today. So again, there's no name to this one, but asking why is it we don't pray the Our Father the way Pope Francis said to say it, and not the way King Henry changed it to. Now I don't know the quite exact history of the English translation of the Our Father, but what you're referring to there is the question of lead us not into temptation. And I don't think Pope Francis promulgated it as a teaching or something that we need to adhere to. He was highlighting that idea that, and I think it was probably part of his catechesis, reflecting on the Our Father. And I think the secular media took it up at some point, trying to generate some controversy, I think, as they are wont to do. But there is a certain ambiguity in the English sense, and lead us not into temptation, as if God would somehow, deliberately lead us into temptation, or be there's a kind of vindictive, capricious God. Is that the word they sometimes use? And then we know that's not the case. Absolutely not. The Lord certainly does not lead us into temptation, except that he allows temptation in order to test us. Again, parents have to allow a certain amount of latitude for their children so that they grow up and they give them certain commands and rules. Thou shalt not put a nail in the plug socket. But again, thou shalt not play with matches. And yet children will transgress and learn to their cost at times what that means. But it's not as if the parents are leading them into temptation, certainly not. So I think the answer there is, I suppose we could change the words, but I don't feel as if I would be the one authorized to do so. If it is that the Church introduces in the International Commission on English and the Liturgy, let's say, with the consent of the bishops, offers a revised translation of the prayer for the Our Father, then we certainly would seek to adhere to that and follow that guideline, that instruction. But it's not been a point of grave ambiguity, I don't think, and one that, for now, at any rate, Pope Francis just simply pointed out to us, and that we're happy to understand it in the way that we've always understood it. So I think that would be a fair approach to that. And we're just so familiar with the text of that prayers. It's taken us a little while, and still taking me a little while, I don't know about you, but still with the updated translation for the Gloria and the Creed at Holy Mass, and just getting accustomed to the new Missal as it was promulgated in 2014. Still a little bit of adjusting going on there as well, but I can see certainly the intent and the understanding behind that revision and that change to the text there. So it's not set in stone, and perhaps it may well be something that will be addressed in time as well. Very good. I think that's more or less touching in on the few topics that were there. Liam sent in a kind prayer to us there as well, a voice recording to it, which I'll return to there maybe again another time. So I hope that's kind of touched in on on what a few messages came in there that I had to refer to. A number of other topics to hand that I was going to zoom in on, but I'll leave them. There's always time on other days to chat and explore further. So thanks very much for your company. Thanks to everybody on Facebook and YouTube as well, and you'll be watching back later, some of you. So nice to have your company. Leave a little like or a thumbs up or a follow or a share or these things on the social media just to help us with our online presence. We'd very much appreciate that indeed. So please stay with us. We'll stop now on the video. We won't stop on the radio, but we'll pause. We'll allow our Angelus bells to toll, and we'll return now with our Angelus and our midday prayer.